snap the photo right at that moment. So I'm going to talk a lot about this photograph tonight. And right away, that's something important that decisive moment photographs tell us. It's the kind of photograph where you want to spend time looking at it, exploring it, thinking about it, looking at the different elements of it. Visually, what is the photograph about? Symbolically, psychologically, what is it about? Take your time looking at it. Very different than what most of us are doing nowadays. How many today we're on Instagram going like this, kind of just like flipping through photos, spending maybe no more than 30 seconds looking at one? So in a good decisive moment photograph, you want to spend time looking at it. Okay, so let's go through the 8 features of a decisive moment photo. Number 8, wait a minute, number 8. Okay, I'm doing this in David Letterman fashion, going from 8 to 1, and since you're New Yorkers, you know what I'm talking about. I'm going to read some quotes from Cartier-Bresson, then I'm going to talk about those quotes. So, and this is the most common idea that comes up when people are talking about decisive moment photography, this idea of capturing a unique fleeting moment. Okay, so here's some of the things he said. Photographers deal in things which are continually vanishing. And when they've vanished, there's no contrivance on earth which can make them come back again. For me, the camera is a sketchbook, an instrument of intuition and spontaneity, the master of the instant, which, in visual terms, questions and decides simultaneously. That's an interesting idea. Questions and decides simultaneously. To take photographs is to hold one's breath when all faculties converge in the face of fleeing reality. It is at that moment that mastering an image becomes a great physical and intellectual joy. There is a creative fraction of a second when you are taking a picture. Your eye must see a composition or an expression that life itself offers you, and you must know with intuition when to click the camera. That is the moment the photographer is creative. Oop, the moment. Once you miss it, it is gone forever. So, here we're not talking about manufacture or stage photography, which are terms that Cartier-Bresson used. It's not like the typical selfie where you take 30 shots of yourself and you pick out the best one and upload it. It's not that kind of photography. It's not the kind of photography where you're setting up a studio and arranging props and arranging a model and arranging the lighting. It's almost like it's like a Buddhist or a Taoist approach to photography. And Cartier-Bresson was interested in Buddhism. I think at one point he referred to himself as a Buddhist, like Buddhist anarchist. I'm not sure what he meant by that. It's kind of an interesting concept. This idea that life is fluid, life is transitory. And in this flow of moments, there are some moments that are precious, where things come together in just the right way, and you're trying to capture that moment in a photograph. A lot of people interpret that as meaning freezing the action at just the right moment. Often in a decisive moment photograph, there's some kind of action, movement taking place, and the photographer captures it at an interesting point, like with the puddle jumper, just as he's jumping across the puddle. So you're going to see a lot of people taking decisive moment photos where there are people flying through the air, or animals flying through the air, doing something interesting. The moment a bird plucks a fish out of the water, hey, look, that's a decisive moment. Instant photography, freezing an instant. I think there's more to it than that in decisive moment photography, but people often think of it that way. It means being in the right place, at the right time, with the right set of skills. And it requires physical adeptness. You can't be a klutz. There was if you look at some of the video of Cartier-Bresson, he's almost like he's dancing as he's moving through the crowd, darting in and out of people, jumping on one foot, takes a photograph, and then moves away. So there is like a physical adeptness to the way that he did it. And it's this idea of capturing a unique fleeting moment that leads us into the idea of photography being like hunting, which is also what Susan Sontag talked about in her book on photography. Cartier-Bresson did say that doing photography is like hunting, except you're not killing people. You're tracking, you're on the slides, furtive, and you're capturing something to preserve it. And again, here's that idea of HCB escaping from a POW camp. You have to do it at the right moment. It's an idea of escape and capture. Usually when people are talking about decisive moment photographs, they're referring to photojournalism and street photography. But what about other kinds of photography? Don't they qualify for decisive moments? Well, if you think of portraits, and Cartier-Bresson did many portraits, you know, a good portrait photographer is going to tell you you don't want to capture the person when they look posed. You want to capture them at that moment when they're being spontaneous and genuine, when you're getting a glimpse of who they are on the inside, not some external facade that looks good, like the perfect selfie, or what people think of the perfect selfie. It's interesting that in psychology is the concept of the micro-expression. I don't know if people have heard of that term. A micro-expression is a facial expression that crosses across someone's face very quickly. It only lasts a fraction of a second. And often the person who has that expression is not aware that they've just shown that emotion on their face. Usually it's like one of the basic emotions like anger or happiness or depression or contempt. If you can capture a micro-expression with a photograph, I would think that's a decisive moment because you're getting a glimpse of what's going on inside the person. Often something that the person themselves, they're not even consciously aware that they've had that feeling. What about other types of photography? Nature photography, landscape photography. Well, people who do that kind of work are going to tell you that things are always changing. The sun is moving, the light is changing, the wind is blowing, the trees are swaying, the water is flowing, the red waves are crashing. And in that flow of movement, there are moments that are more precious and interesting than others. So they will probably tell you too that yes, in our kind of photography also you can have decisive moments. So here's one of HCB's photos. I'm sure you've seen this one. And it's a good idea, a good example of that idea that you're capturing movement at just a certain point, just the right second. So I'm assuming he's standing at the top of a staircase here, and a guy whizzes by on a bicycle, and he captures him at just the right moment in the geometry of the scene. He's in a rule of thirds position, all the lines are converging on him. It's like a perfectly composed photograph. A fraction of a second later, and that's gone. Okay, number 7, a candid photo of people